Hello, another topic I got this morning and about coursework is about leadership, organizational leadership, which is nice because that's what I do, and that's my doctorate in studying people and organizations and groups and things like that. And it's really nice to get a question finally on that after many, many years. One of the things is about the great man theory of how to analyze people through this theory. And then what's interesting too about that uh, is that the student wants to know about how to study these things in order to do better in their life. So I always say, well, first of all, it's not really considered great man theory. A lot of people call it great person theory because obviously there are great women in the world and there's great men, and you want to study these people and the appropriate ones and appropriate people. So having said all that, there is a good book that I use a lot. It's called Leadership Theory and Practice. It's Northouse. I think that's clear. Let me just move it around a little bit. But anyways, this book here is more of a general book, like a secondary book. It's not really primary, meaning he's not really researching. He's more collecting things, and he's got some great analysis of like different theories, like LMX, situational leadership, great person theory, just all sorts of different theories, path goal, and they're good because this book talks about like here's the positives, here's the negatives, but more specifically about great person theory, great man theory, or some people call it trait theory. That's another neutral way of saying it. Is that these theories, while interesting, that theory doesn't really accurately it's not really scientific or academic. Okay, in other words, I can go read a book about George Washington, and it's a great book, and it really tells a lot of good things, like characteristics and studies. But what you call one thing like a trait or like a characteristic or something like a habit, you call it one thing and someone calls it something else. You make a list of 20 things, they make a list of 15 things. Some things overlap, some things don't. Some things are called something different, so they kind of do. My point being is it's not really accurate. So it's okay to read it. It's okay to see what you think George Washington did right, or Abraham Lincoln, or fill in the blank. Doesn't matter. Just put the person in there. It doesn't matter. Because if you have a bias towards them, you're going to forget the negatives that they do, right? And there are people that you can study that are very negative, very, like some people call them evil, but they bring a lot of lessons to the table. Like this is something not to do. And sometimes a bad example can teach better than a good example. And you can fill in the blanks with that. Having said that, you have to put things in the context of the time. When you study someone from 0 BC or whatever, 1 AD or whatever, that's distinctly different than someone you're studying from the 15th, 17th centuries today. There's different parameters. So while you may say, well, this person, like founding fathers, for example, they have the trait and it's a negative trait and it was about slavery. Well, yeah, but put it in context, okay? I mean, it's not like if they were here today, would they be different? Yes, more than likely they would because they would have grown up in a different context and time. And I'm not condoning it, and nobody will condone it. It's a horrible thing. Put it in context, okay? There are people today doing things that in 100, 200, 300 years, they will look back and judge them and say, look how backwards they were. Look how horrible they were. They're not great people. They're horrible people. And they didn't do these things, okay? So always put that in context. History will determine the victor. The victor writes the history books, okay? So that's something to note as well. But getting back to great person theory, trait theory, whatever, is I think it's a value to read history because you learn about the person, the history, the development, more the psychology of the person, how their mindset was. That's probably more important, how they did it. Also, too, there's a good book called Against the Gods, and that one. Uh, oh, jeez, where is that one? It's a small little book. Oh, shoot. That's my little honey badger that I got. Let's see. It's against the, yeah, there we go. Capitalism and freedom. No, that's the Milton. But anyways, it's against the odds, and I believe it's over there. But it's a book about statistics and how sometimes it's just luck, right? So I'm not suggesting Washington to keep with that study, I'm not suggesting Washington was lucky, and that's the only reason he was successful. But there are times that one thing could have changed in his life, and he would not be the first among us, as Light Horse Henry Lee said. He might have been a traitor, or he might have been seen differently, or he would have been, yeah, he's a great guy, but he wasn't President Washington. He wasn't the first president. He wasn't the guy who set it all in motion, who set the tone. So that's very important to note that there is a factor of luck, and a lot of organizational leadership people or people who study people, they don't like to talk about that. Okay, so because luck is not something you can really so much define, and you can't really plan it, you can't prepare for it, you can't really do much to make that happen. It just happens, and you can set the stage all day long. But think about this: for every one person that's president, how many people below that would you say, God, they would have made a great president? Think about that. I mean, for every one, think about that. For every one band that makes it famous, how many thousands of bands don't? For every one NFL player, how many thousands don't? Okay, so just kind of do the math, right? It's just like anything. There's an element of luck to it. So the people we study are very fortunate, very lucky, very talented in some ways. But having said that, you can study other great people that maybe take the grade off, but just say people study. We find them in our lives all the time. They could be a parent, a boss, a mentor, a community leader. They're very good people. Maybe they're not technically great, but they have a lot of traits that can be studied as well. So I think that's what's more important, is watching their habits, watching their what we might personally define as traits. Be careful about ideology, or like idol worshiping. Like, you might blur out the negatives and see only the positives. We see that sometimes with studies on some founding fathers. Sometimes people get almost blinded by what they do, what they perceive. Okay, because they don't read the whole history. They don't get the whole concept. Also, too, when we read about people, we see snapshots. Okay, we see a highlight book. We don't see the whole story. We don't see what happened from this date to this day. We just see, this is what happened. Here's the highlights. So what I would suggest, again, read the books that interest you, because that's what's important. It'll give you info, data, things that you can process and use in your life. Be careful about making lists. Well, this is how this person is, so I'm going to be this way. You might want to look more at their general mindset or ideology or way of thinking, and then that could help you more effectively mimic those behaviors. Be careful who you mimic. Okay, that's another thing. That can be a bad decision as well. Maybe get a collection of people. So these are just some things to think about. Okay, so hopefully that addressed that issue, and if not, drop me a line. But I think that will cover most of the great person theory, and I do appreciate the topic. Thank you.